Hey YouTube, it's the Frugal Prepper again. It's actually my second video. What I wanted to talk about today, I guess it was kind of a foregone conclusion with the first video because I had a intended audience, but the nature of YouTube obviously exposed it to more than just the guys I was doing the video for. So I thought I would take a couple minutes and just talk about why I prepare, why I'm a prepper. For the folks that I've been working with and talking with, their eyes have been opened, I think. But for other folks that may still kind of have some reservations about it, it's I guess good to share the reasons as to why. So why I'm a prepper? Well, I guess first and foremost, I've been a prepper for quite a while. I mean, I was growing up. I was a Cub Scout and a Boy Scout, and that, of course, is they're always prepared, and that's one of the core fundamentals, I guess, of the Scouts, along with several others. But so it's always kind of been foremost in my mind. And growing up, my grandparents lived on a farm, and so I got to see, I guess, a way of living that I think has kind of gone by the wayside. I mean, if you talk to, if you're fortunate enough to still have your great grandparents around or your grandparents, it's always an eye-opening experience to talk to folks who've lived through, especially at least in the U.S., the Great Depression. Things were a lot different. People, I think, were frugal because they had no choice. People had to make it through tough times, and I think our recession we're going through now isn't nearly as bad, at least in the U.S. again, as it was back during the Great Depression. But I think there's really a lot of skills, a lot of just fundamental ways of living that have been lost over time. I mean, I remember talking to my great grandparents, and certainly with my grandparents. They grew their own food in a garden. They canned their food. They stored food. They rotated their food. They ate what they stored. They stored what they ate, and they were not entirely self-sufficient, but self-sufficiency was certainly high on their list of priorities. And I think in today's society, with people moving out of the rural areas into the suburban or urban areas, there's been too much dependence on the on that just-in-time mentality, and our supply chain has become too important to too many people. I mean, people can drive up to a window and food be handed out to them. Why have food at home? I mean, it's always going to be there, but again, the same mentality that the government's going to provide, or the man's going to be there with the food for you in the event of a problem. I think became abundantly clear that that's not the case during Hurricane Katrina here in the U.S. So why I prep is for many reasons. It's I think as a father, it's my responsibility to make sure that I'm preparing for my family, that I'm able to, I guess, recession proof, or at least, create some recession insurance for my family so that in the event that I lose my job, I've got one less thing on my list of things to worry about. I mean, imagine losing your job like some of these guys that I work with. Imagine, not having a day or two of food at home and you lose your job. I mean, what's the first thing you got to do? You got to prioritize. First find a new job, obviously, is your resume up to date, but more importantly, think about the stresses involved in losing your job. How are you going to feed your family? How are you going to feed yourself? How are you going to get by for a week? How are you going to get by for a month? Because job hunting is not a go out to Google, do a quick web search, find a job, apply, and you're done with a couple clicks of a mouse. I mean, you actually have to talk to people, and in some cases it could take a week or a month or more, depending on the area in which you live. So not being stressed about how you're going to feed your family for 30 days while you're unemployed. That's huge. Imagine you can turn off you can cancel your television, and you can cancel your cell phones, and your Netflix accounts, and stop going to the movies, and those kind of things. But you got to eat. You got to pay your utilities, at least most of your utilities. So I think it's just it's insurance against job loss first and foremost in my mind. And then you can talk about regional disasters, you can talk about blizzards, you can talk about floods, and where you live you can talk about tornadoes or earthquakes. I think it's just important to be prepared. And the more prepared you are, the less you have to rely on a system that can't support the people that are relying on it. Plain and simple. I mean, I live in an area where we're probably 3 to 5 times a year told we have to boil all our water because of a problem with a water treatment facility. And the storage of water, so some people might not be a big deal. You think you turn a tap on and water comes out, and there you go. For us, though, we've usually got a couple 100 gallons of water just so we can, drink and cook, and we never had to use it to bathe, but we could certainly do that, and certainly use it to flush toilets and that kind of thing. So I think, and again, my opinion, and I think it's shared by a lot of people out there on YouTube. If you look around, is you really need to be prepared, and it's Yankee Prepper again has his survival triangle. Food and water is one of the cornerstones. Shelter and heat is another. I'm just talking about food and water right now. I mean, there's guys that have hundreds and hundreds of videos out there. There's all kinds of folks that have videos out there that just talk about each of those pieces of that survival triangle. I mean, you can spend all day looking at bug out bags and gun reviews and how to make heat and generators. I mean, it's just, the list goes on and on. So again, this is really just for, or at least it was initially, for those guys that had nothing and were starting with nothing. So I figured I'd just kind of give you a quick background on why I prep and some of the reasons why I gave them. It's like having a spare tire in your car. I mean, in some cases that just makes good sense. But nobody would question a spare tire in a car. But why do they question a week's worth of food or a month's worth of food? Why do they question having a first aid kit? It's common sense. So one quick thing I guess I wanted to leave you with, just my thoughts, is I talk to a lot of guys. I deal with a lot of guys that they're prepping and they're buying web gear and they're buying guns and they're buying ammo and they're reloading, and those things are fine. But one of the things that I found interesting with these guys is they're almost creating a trophy collection. I mean, let's take flashlights for an example. I know guys that are spending $100 on a flashlight because it's a 220 lumen flashlight or a 200 lumen flashlight with multiple modes. And the problem I see with that is these guys are afraid to take these flashlights outside. They put them in their pocket. They wrap them in a plastic bag. They're concerned that something might happen to their flashlight. And and if the military teaches anything, and it does teach a lot of things, 2 is 1, 1 is none. Well, $100 flashlight, you drop it one time and you're finished. And these guys are afraid to have a flashlight. They don't want to get it dirty, and they're certainly not going to put it on an AR or an AK and let that thing hit the ground. It's just unheard of. So typically, and again, not frugality. It's not being cheap. When you're buying a flashlight, for example, my boys and I camp quite a bit with the scouts and by ourselves. And I got my boys' flashlights. I went to Menards, found this 110 lumen 3-watt Guidesman LED flashlight. They were $11. $11 a piece. We put 2 AA batteries in there, and I got another one here that's actually not in the blister pack, and they're pretty darn powerful. I mean, that's a bright light. But more importantly, if they drop it, if they lose it, if it gets wet, that's $11. Now imagine a guy with a $100 tack light. He drops it, he loses it, breaks it, it gets wet. That's $100 out of his pocket. I could buy 10 of those flashlights for what he spent on one, and I'd rather have 10 to have spare parts. I'd rather have 10 so that I can give them out to people, and if they lose them, great. If I get them back, even better. But and again, we're talking tactical, but you can go to. I went to Walmart and bought one of these flashlights. It's a mag light. It's a 2D cell mag light. $15. Okay, it won't fit on an AR. At least it might. If it does, it looks really ugly. But again, I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about spending frugally, having what I need, and being able to not invest a full month's pay or a week's pay in a flashlight. So something to think about when you're prepping. It might look nice on an AR and might have a cool bunch of modes to it and a name, but I mean, what's a flashlight for? It's to light up the darkness. And I can buy 10 200 lumen flashlights, or you can buy one $100 200 lumen flashlight. At a certain point, who cares how many lumens there are? So just something to think about. See you next time.